Welcome, everyone. This is the August 12th, 2020 meeting of the Moscow Planning and Zoning Commission. I'd like to welcome everybody, including Wendy and Joel, who are via Zoom tonight. Before we start the agendas, it's my pleasure to pass on a very warm, heartfelt congratulations to Ann Peterson, Deputy City Clerk, who is our left and right arm both. She'll be retiring at the end of the month, and we just want to wish her well and tell her how much we have all appreciated the work that she has done over these many years. So, Ann, thank you so very much.
Thank you.
Another departure, somebody that is in the back, Zach Ellis, our tech guy, is who has directed all these wonderful meetings and videos, is departing for Boston, and we will miss him sorely as well. So I just wanted to mention those couple of things. So on to the agenda. The first item is approval of the minutes from the July 22nd meeting. Do we have any additions, corrections, deletions? If not, I'd entertain a motion to approve.
Motion to approve.
Victoria, and a second?
I second.
Okay, Wendy second. So all in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? And abstentions? Okay, minutes are approved. The next item is our public comment period. For items that are either not on the agenda tonight or pending before the commission or city council. We see a couple of folks out in the audience. Either of you would like to have anything to say? Okay, well, thank you for attending, and we'll move on. Next item is the approval of the reason statement of relevant criteria and standards. We have three of those. Mike, do you want those as three separate approvals, or do you want to lump them into one approval?
It'd be up to you. We could do either. If people have, or commissioners have certain corrections on individual ones, we could certainly cover them one at a time. But if they, in general, all three of them look good, then we can certainly make one motion to approve all of them.
Okay, so commissioners, anybody have any comments or corrections you would like to make to any of the three? Okay, if not, let's entertain a motion to approve the reason statement of relevant and criterion standards for the proposed subdivision plat, the proposed planned unit development, and the proposed rezoning that we approved at the last meeting. So, anybody would like to make a motion?
So moved.
So, Nels, is it okay?
I'm
sorry, was that you, Rich?
I missed the meeting.
It was Joel.
Oh, Joel, thank you. I'm looking the wrong way. Okay, and a second?
Second.
And Rich second? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Abstentions? Great, okay, so Mike, we'll consider those all three approved at this one motion then.
Great.
Great. And the next item on the agenda is the final review of the small cell wireless facility draft ordinance. Mike, I would like to acknowledge that we have received some additional comments, both from David, who's out in the audience, and Nancy Cheney. I've reviewed those, and I don't know, do you want to get into those at all during your presentation of the final review?
Yeah, I was just kind of recap where we've been. I didn't have a formal presentation prepared, although we can go back and look at it if we need to. But was just going to kind of go over the changes that have occurred since last time we looked at it, which was that last meeting. And I had mentioned before that I was going to go through, and we still needed to fill out some of the whereas statements, and so I've gone through and done that. I also went through, David had submitted some comments before that were largely grammatical, and I've gone through and corrected a lot of those. And so that's really the changes that have occurred since last meeting. But we did receive a couple documents, like you had mentioned, from Nancy and David that had, and I'd just leave it up to what the commission wanted to do. We certainly could, go through those documents if you wanted to. I was thinking that a lot of the a lot of the comments are grammatical in nature as well from Nancy, and I could certainly go through and see which of those were appropriate and make those changes if you're comfortable with that. And then some of the other substantive changes, we certainly could, if commissioners had specific questions on any of those, I can certainly try to answer those the best I can. If not, certainly don't need to go through each one by one, but if you'd like to do that, we certainly
No,
could.
I would just as soon not go through one by one, but open it up if any of the commissioners have questions or comments about that. It also occurred to me that based on the last, we had some comments that were reviewed by the city attorney, and as I recall, the master agreement was going to cover a lot of those kinds of issues, and it occurred to me that that's kind of what's happening here as well. So I want to acknowledge that we're certainly paying attention to those issues that are raised, but it probably, the ordinance itself probably isn't the best place to address it, but the master service agreement probably is, which will be developed as we move forward. So, but I did want to acknowledge to David that we had received and reviewed, but I would like to open it up if anybody has any other comments that they want to make.
Well, I don't want to go over every grammatical. I think we can leave it to you. Some of it is going to be stylistic for consistency in documents, and you'll catch those to leave it that way or make the changes as needed. Anything substantive, I would like you to discuss with us.
Okay. Do you have any specifics, or?
No, not in front of me. I don't have it in front of me, so.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, just in my review of, I guess starting with Nancy's letter, some of the whereas, and it goes through quite a bit of detail on the whereas statements. The first one, kind of just speaking to kind of requiring small cell installations to accommodate data demand. I can certainly elaborate a little bit more on that. I don't see any issue with, providing more detail and kind of clarifying that, so I can certainly address that. The next couple, I believe, are grammatical. There's a question regarding authority reserved for local governments. Well, that authority is going to be handed down from the federal and state level, so that's where that whereas statement comes from. There was, I think, a duplicate in David's comments as well as Nancy's regarding non-commercial. So there's a section that the section does not apply to non-commercial antenna towers exclusively used as accessory to a residential use on the same lot. Well, that's your standard ham radio tower that people that partake in amateur radio, that's their those are those towers. You're not going to see a 5G facility on there, because I guess the key word here is non-commercial. So all the regular provider towers are going to be commercial towers. And so that's why we purposely exclude non-commercial antenna towers, because we don't want to have the ham radio towers fall under the umbrella of telecommunications ordinance. I think the next paragraph is more grammatical. There was a question, so it's similar to the previous non-commercial question. There's two CUP requirements here. So there's one that states that if there's a installation, relocation, replacement, or alteration of an antenna tower that exceeds 35 feet in height, and then further in the document we have 40 feet in height for small cell. Well, this is just the first one refers to the macro cell towers. So that's when the CUP kicks in, is at 35 feet for the macro cell. Small cell has their own regulations, and that would kick in a CUP requirement at 40 feet. And so that's the distinction between the two height limitations before it kicks in a CUP. Let's see. There's a question regarding what security, and this is not a new section, this is just a section that's been carried over, and this really applies to just the macro cell facilities. questioning who's responsible for the security measures. Well, it's going to be the applicant that's responsible for security. They're going to want to secure their site. I mean, really the only dangerous part of a cellular tower is probably going to be the electrical component of it, as well as if there's any type of climbing apparatus. I mean, a lot of the stealth poles are not going to have anything to climb there unless you're a tree climber with that equipment. So it's really going to be up to the cellular provider, the applicant. It's not going to be something that the city is going to pretty much scrutinize as far as their facility. It's going to be largely, they need to provide some type of security measures, but it's largely going to be up to the provider to provide the security.
Mike, if I recall, sorry, I can't remember if it was Nancy or David's comment about an enforcement piece of that, but there really isn't an enforcement component to that, is there? The security thing.
Yeah, I mean, as far as security, it's really open-ended. I mean, it's pretty general. Every telecommunications facility shall be protected from unauthorized access by appropriate security measures. I mean, the enforcement's going to be police enforcement. So if there's same as any trespassing complaint, if there's frequent unauthorized access, there's going to be enforcement through the police department.
Okay.
And I suppose if there's too easy access to it, why there's also public safety rules that can be invoked.
Yep. Noise, this another one's grammatical. Let's see. There was about the signage. Just questioning, adding anything about materials, legibility, illumination. I don't know that why we'd specifically single out these type of facility signage. I mean, typically we don't direct any other portion of our sign ordinance to specify what materials they're using, and so I don't know why, we would do that here. Really, we're just, they have the regulations and they don't show up in our sign code. They just show up in this section because, we want to keep the signage probably as minimal as possible, but still provide the effect of warning people that it is a facility that they shouldn't enter. So, I don't really see any issue with that section. We can certainly clarify the on-site vehicular parking. I have no problem with, for temporary use by authorized personnel. I think that would make some sense. So we can certainly look at that. And she had a question regarding kind of spacing, shrouding, or painting, and the FCC not allowing that because it would render the network capability ineffective. I haven't heard of that. As far as I know, we can still restrict the kind of the frequency, the separation between the towers. It just can't be so great that we ineffectively, reduce or eliminate the network. So, it's usually the 500 to 750 foot range. I mean, once you start getting over that, I think you're effectively making it ineffective at that point. And so, 250 feet seems well within the range of the facilities, so I wouldn't see, that big of an issue. Also, a lot of the radio frequency waves, since they're high frequency, they get blocked by trees and buildings and other things of that nature. So if you do end up increasing it to the 750, 1,000, then you could, start to run into issues with not being able to achieve an effective network. So that's really the only thing that I, in my research, have heard of. But I think we're well within being at 250, that threshold. And then the other was just same question about the height limitation, and just explaining that the 35 feet is the macro and 40 feet is the small facility for CUPs. And then the last statement is about, I guess, continual monitoring of radio frequency emissions and follow-up emissions testing. So I think once again, this is largely controlled by the FCC,
Right.
and I don't know that we want to spend, a lot of resources tracking these and following up if they're required to comply with the FCC regulations
Right.
anyway. So I think that, we're going to keep it fairly simple as far as having them prove that they need to, comply with the regulations upon submittal of the facilities, but the ongoing tracking is something that could take quite a bit of staff resources to do. So I would probably advise against that, but commission certainly could.
I
Take a look at
certainly
adding
wouldn't
language.
like to see it in the ordinance. I mean, I suppose that the master service agreement
Yeah.
could add a component to it if we felt necessary, but I agree with you. I
If
just
they
keep
felt
the.
necessary.
I'm sorry?
If they felt necessary.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I agree with everything you're saying, Mike. Because I did read through it all, and that all sounds right to me.
Okay. And then looking through David's comments, I think a lot of them overlapped with Nancy's. If there's anything specific.
I didn't have any particular question, because I did think that there was a fair amount of overlap, although, and David, I wanted to make a comment, and for everybody else as well, there's going to be an opportunity for public input when we go to the public hearing in September, so there'll be opportunities to raise any of these issues again. But Mike, the only other thing that I was wondering is, do we need to have city attorney take another look-see before we go to the public hearing, or do you feel that the initial review was sufficient?
I could certainly forward.
I think the initial review was sufficient. I do
You
not
did.
think we need to go back to the public attorney.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I could go ahead and I forwarded the comments on to her as well.
Oh, you did?
So,
Okay.
Yeah,
That's-
we've scheduled it for the public hearing on September 9th.
Okay,
But I could certainly, and I'll just wait to hear back. I just forwarded it to her to make sure that she didn't see anything that she thought was a concern. and
Good.
that
That's
we-
all
that
I-
we needed to
Yeah,
address.
if she catches something,
yeah,
she'll let
that's
us
all I
know.
wanted to find out, so. Okay, any other questions from commissioners that they'd like to direct to Mike before we? guess
I
we're-
would just want to say that I read through the comments both by David Hall and Nancy Cheney, and I would agree there was quite a bit of overlap between them, and I think you hit most of the substantial remarks and comments, and I appreciate their input. Some of the desires in them are really out of our purview. We did leave the health issues in the lap of the Sustainable Environment Commission, should they choose in the future to recommend some revisions. But they recommended that we proceed ahead. So
Yeah.
that's what we've been doing. So.
Great, thanks, Nan. Thanks, Wendy. Yeah, I think that I certainly agree that, and I'm glad that we got the comments and that we were able to go through them. One other thing that I wanted to mention and thank Mike is the article that you sent out was very informative, I thought. So if anybody hasn't read that, I think you sent it out to the whole commission, didn't you?
Yeah.
Yeah, if anybody hasn't seen or read that yet, it's worth a few minutes. It's not a real long, I think it was only like 11 pages, so it's not a real long article, but it was very informative, so. Okay, so.
I would add, not only do we appreciate the comments that come in from typically Nancy, David, and others, but we rely on them. They do catch really important things for us, and we appreciate that.
Yeah, certainly do, so thank you. Okay, any other questions, comments of Mike? I guess we're, Mike, other than just us directing to go ahead and set this up for a public hearing?
That would be it, yeah.
Good to go?
Yeah.
Okay. Any other comments? And we're really sorry that you're not going to be here for that public hearing.
Sure she is as well.
I'll watch online.
Okay. Okay.
And
I'm
And
sorry.
you're eligible to be a commissioner.
Yeah. Okay, any other comments? We'll move on to the next item. Joel, you're up next. It's the Transportation Committee or Commission report.
Well, so far as I know, there's nothing scheduled, so nothing to report.
Okay, thank you. The easiest report that you've given. So Mike, any correspondence or announcements that we need to?
Just a reminder that our next meeting's canceled, the second one in August, and we won't meet again until September 9th.
Great, okay. Wendy, did you have anything that you wanted to address before this has
Well,
gone
I
pretty-
just want to also thank, on behalf of the commission, Ann Peterson, for your support over all these years that you've been spending your nights with us instead of doing something more exciting, and we really appreciate your dedication, your accuracy, just your professionalism in general. Thank you so much.
And Wendy, I know you can't see it from there, but she's grinning from ear to ear under the mask.
Oh yeah. Well, I can smile.
I miss when we get to see faces, so. All right, anything else, Mike, at all?
Nothing for
My
staff,
goodness, we've nearly set a record, I think. Anything else for the good of the order by any of the other commissioners? All right, with that, meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks,
thank
Wendy.
you.
Thanks, Joel.
Okay.